Top 5 laziest zodiac signs. Are you on the list? Are you really lazy? Or just don't want to waste energy on something that does not lead to a real result? In this video, we will analyze 5 zodiac signs that are considered the laziest. But don't rush to conclusions. Laziness is not always a vice. Sometimes it is a deep instinct that protects from vanity and leads along the path of least resistance, to the great. Some avoid action because they feel when they do not need to move forward. Others postpone a step until the ideal moment comes. But all of these are different facets of one truth. Not all lazy people are equally lazy. Are you on this list? Or someone close to you? You will find out, and perhaps you will understand a lot about yourself. Subscribe to the channel if you want to understand your nature more deeply and see how astrology can reveal what logic is silent about. And write in the comments, who, in your opinion, is the laziest according to the zodiac sign? Let's see how intuitively accurate you are. Let's begin. Top 5 zodiac signs who find it easier to lie down than to run. The first sign is Gemini. Geminis are lazy in a different way. Not in the lying on the couch and doing nothing format, but in their own special intellectual form. Their minds work at speed, but this is precisely what prevents them from finishing anything. They do not stop at one thing, and if the task becomes boring, that's it. Interest is lost. Concentration crumbles. This is where their internal laziness begins. Invisible, but destructive. They do not want to invest in routine. It is difficult for them to continue if there is no novelty in the process. They can come up with a brilliant idea, start a dozen tasks, inspire the team, and disappear at the most crucial moment. Not because they do not know how. It just became uninteresting. It is easier for them to delegate, postpone, make excuses, change the subject. They easily disguise this as busyness or sudden urgency elsewhere. The laziness of Geminis is insidious in that it always looks like, I'm busy with something else. This is a sign that is beautifully lazy. He does not lie in bed. He sits with his phone, flips through hundreds of tabs, discusses important things. But all this is a way to escape from an action that requires monotony. Their mind is always one step ahead of their body. They are masters of procrastination. They need inspiration, impulse, motivation. Without them, they quickly cool down. It is difficult for them to do the same thing every day. They merge from work processes where they cannot be distracted. It is important for them to be in the flow of ideas and not in a system. If you want Gemini to do work, give them a format where they can improvise, change roles, communicate. If you ask them to sit for 4 hours in tables, they will disappear. The most interesting thing is that they can be incredibly productive, but only in those moments when they really want to. They are able to redo overnight what others do for a week. But, alas, these are rare flashes. The rest of the time, Gemini are lazy with their minds. They do not want to waste themselves on dull tasks. Even in their personal lives, this laziness manifests itself subtly. They won't be the first to call if they think someone else might do it. They won't text if they can just scroll through stories. And the most amazing thing is that they get away with it, because they know how to compensate for their laziness with ease of communication, humor, and charisma. No one even suspects that inside them there is a whole system of excuses for why it's better not to start anything today. Geminis are lazy professionals. They know how not to do something that's not interesting, and at the same time, look busy. This is a special talent that they are really strong in. Their laziness is not in the body. It is in the rejection of boredom. They cannot be where nothing moves. And until you understand this, they will disappear, leaving behind only chaos and a do-it-later list. The second sign is Libra. The laziness of Libra is the art of delayed choice. Their main problem is not doing something, but understanding what exactly to do. They can weigh options for hours, compare details, convince themselves that it's not time yet, and use this time to stretch out anything. This is laziness through doubt. They don't like abrupt steps, not because they are afraid. They are simply too lazy to delve into all the consequences. It is easier for them to postpone, reschedule, ask for another day to think. This is a sign that can endlessly plan, discuss, build a strategy, but never start acting. Libra's laziness looks like analysis, and this is what makes it dangerous. Their body is ready to work. The mind is clear. But decisions are like a brake. They do not want to rush because suddenly they will do it wrong. It is better to sit, think, rest, and then, maybe, start. They often get stuck at the start because they do not know what is best. And instead of trying, they freeze. Libras are masters at explaining why now is not the time. They always have a but. They can easily convince themselves and others that a pause is not inaction, but a reasonable stop. And after this stop, a week, a month, a year can pass. They are simply in no hurry. Not because they can't, because they don't want to rush. Laziness in Libra is a mask of calm. They can stare at the ceiling for hours and say that they are meditating, when in fact they just don't want to make a decision. They don't want stress. They don't want confrontation. It is easier for them to avoid than to get involved in an analysis. They choose the path of least resistance, even if it leads to a dead end. Even in everyday life, their laziness is noticeable. They don't take out the trash because I'll go in half an hour anyway. They don't call the bank because there's music on the line again. They don't argue, they don't prove, they don't impose, because they're lazy. It's better to agree than to explain. And at the same time, if the situation really requires it, they'll get it together. Libras know how to work, but only if someone else takes on the task and directs them. They need a person who will say, "Get up, it's time." Without this, they will hesitate endlessly. Libra's laziness is not physical, but emotional. It hides in their indecisiveness, and it is this that steals their time. The third sign is Cancer. Cancers are lazy in their comfort zone. Their weakness is in coziness. As soon as it's warm, calm, and safe around them, the internal brake turns on. They don't want to go beyond the boundaries. They don't rush into the unknown. They're too lazy to strain themselves if there are familiar things nearby: food, a bed, and a TV series. Cancer's laziness begins unnoticed. Today he didn't answer the letter. He's not in the mood. Postponed a call tomorrow. I'll still have time. Canceled a meeting the day after tomorrow. Nothing important anyway. And so step by step he falls into a swamp of postponements. Cancers do not admit it to themselves. They explain it by fatigue, overload, the need to recover. But in fact, they simply do not want to get out of their shell. Comfort is the main trigger for their inaction. As soon as you feel comfortable, that's it. The energy is gone. Even if there are plans, goals, desires, they will be postponed. Cancers are prone to passive laziness. They do not refuse to do things. They stretch them out. Everything will be, but not now. Now they need a little rest. They know how to create the illusion of being busy. Everything is scheduled in their head. But between I wanted and I did, there is often laziness. It is difficult for them to force themselves to act without an emotional stimulus. Until there is an internal response, Cancer will postpone everything for later. He will tell himself, "I'm not lazy, it's just not the time." It is difficult for them to leave the warm zone. Physical activity, changes, conflicts, all this requires effort, which they do not want to put in. It is easier for them to avoid, refuse, sit it out, even if it is harmful. They know that they need to get up, go, do it, but laziness. Because a soft blanket and hot tea won. Even in relationships, their laziness manifests itself subtly. They will not find out, sort things out, argue, because they are too lazy to strain themselves. It is better to pretend that everything is fine. They may not call, write, or inquire, not because it is not important, but because at the moment they do not have enough emotional resources. To pull Cancer out of laziness, you need a push from the outside. Only when the situation begins to collapse will he get up. Before that, he will hide in the shadows. And all this time explain why it is not the time yet. Cancer's laziness is not a weakness, it is protection. He is lazy so as not to disturb his inner peace, but this is also his vulnerability. The fourth sign is Sagittarius. When it comes to laziness, few people expect to see Sagittarius on this list, and in vain. He has a special style of inaction, disguised as reflection, strategy, philosophy, and creative search for inspiration. Sagittarius can spend half a day scrolling through the news, documentaries, or motivational videos, convincing himself that he is looking for ideas for future projects. In fact, he postpones action, even if he knows exactly what needs to be done now. He needs to feel the scale, challenge, meaning. Without this, any task causes boredom and internal resistance. The main form of Sagittarius laziness is procrastination in the wrapper of spiritual growth. He is able to change nothing in his life for weeks because he does not feel the right energy or waits for the right moment. At the same time, he is not bored. He can fill his days with philosophical reflections, spontaneous walks, conversations on deep topics. But these actions often hide an unwillingness to face routine, responsibilities, and systematic work. Sagittarius does not like restrictions and discipline. If he is driven into a framework, he begins to sabotage work at the physical level. Suddenly fatigue, apathy, distraction by everything appears. He can start cleaning the room, reading a book, or even cooking a complex dish, just to avoid doing what is really important. It is difficult for him to concentrate on one thing, especially if it requires patience, precision, and regularity. Sagittarius's laziness often disguises itself as spontaneity. He says that he does everything on inspiration, but in practice, inspiration does not come for weeks. But during this time, he manages to convince himself that an internal turn is about to happen, and then he will suddenly begin to act. And this really happens, but only when an external stimulus appears. For example, a deadline, a crisis, or strong motivation in the form of a dream. Until this moment, Sagittarius can be an inactive genius that no one understands. He does not like to be under control. Any external attempt to speed him up causes irritation. He believes that he knows when and how to act, and if left alone, he can really get down to work and do an incredible amount. But he is not in a hurry. The feeling of freedom is important to him, even if it harms the cause. He does not work by the clock. He waits for the moment when the inner fire lights up again. And this wait can be very long. The mechanism of Sagittarius laziness is a conflict between the desire for great results and the unwillingness to engage in routine. He wants high, powerful, interesting things right away, but the path there lies through discipline and boring steps, which he does not like so much. Therefore, he often stalls at the start. He can discuss, plan, build imaginary strategies for a long time, but without an external stimulus, he rarely reaches the implementation. Only when everything around him begins to collapse or a strong external motivator appears, the Sagittarius wakes up and begins to act. An important feature is that he is a master of self-persuasion. He can explain his inactivity with philosophy, psychology, spiritual reasons, search for meaning. He does not recognize laziness as a fact. He considers it a temporary stop, internal work, a reboot stage. But in fact, it is a banal avoidance of effort, fear of failure, and internal resistance to reality. If Sagittarius could be switched on for daily activity, he would reach incredible heights. but his internal compass works differently. He does not wait for instructions, but for inspiration. He can rush into work at 3 in the morning, and in the morning he falls out of the process again. Irregularity is his weakness. Lack of discipline is the cause of failures. And laziness, no matter how beautifully he calls it, remains a constant shadow next to his talent. The fifth sign is Virgo. In the public consciousness, Virgo is a model of work, order, and responsibility. But it is precisely behind this mask of perfectionism that a very deep and rational laziness hides. This is not banal inaction. This is a strategic form of avoidance. Virgo does not lie on the couch. She simply refuses to start something that, in her opinion, cannot be done perfectly. If a task seems too difficult, unclear, or ineffective to her, she can put it off for weeks, inventing more important things, replacing real activity with an imitation of busyness. Virgo's main enemy is the fear of an imperfect result. She will not start work if she is not sure that she can handle it 100%. This is what creates a unique form of laziness. It looks like overload, perfectionism, fatigue, doubt. But in essence, it is avoidance. She is so afraid of failure that it is easier to do nothing than to do it poorly. Her laziness is not noticeable externally, but it destroys from the inside. Tasks pile up. Time is running out. Energy is falling. Instead of doing the job, Virgo can go into research, clarification, preparation. She will spend hours studying instructions, setting up the system, changing fonts, arranging folders alphabetically. Anything, just to avoid getting down to real work. Her idealism becomes a trap. The higher the bar, the stronger the paralysis. And this leads to stagnation, which is no worse than banal idleness. It just looks much smarter and nobler. Virgo tends to do a lot of secondary things to justify her unwillingness to do the main thing. She can tidy up the house, clean the equipment, update files, reread old notes. All this creates a feeling of busyness, but in fact, this is a refusal to act in an important area. She overloads herself with details to avoid focusing on what requires real effort. Virgo's laziness is an internal block. She does not need inspiration, but a feeling of security, clarity, confidence. Without this, she freezes. And the longer this state lasts, the harder it is to get out of it. Her mind overheats from analysis. She can spend hours thinking about solutions and ultimately choose none. This mental labyrinth takes her away from action. She gets tired before she even starts. The difficulty is that others often don't see laziness in Virgo. She seems very busy, but her tasks are not what is really needed. She avoids complex tasks under the guise of caring about order. She doesn't say, "I'm lazy." She says, "I'm not ready yet. It's not time yet. I need to think everything through." And these phrases become a trap in which she keeps herself. If Virgo understands that there will be no ideal moment, her efficiency soars. But before that moment, she can spin around the task for months without taking a single step forward. And while she is looking for the ideal path, life goes on. Laziness, disguised as rationality, steals her energy, time, and opportunities. And only honesty with yourself can get it back into motion.